Okay, in this module we're going to be making a tank using the box modeling method. For starters, we'll go ahead and go over to our Create panel, Geometry, and choose Box. And we'll go ahead and set up our segments to 3 by 3 by 3. And then in the top viewport, go ahead and drag out a rectangle shape. Go ahead and make that about 2 grid spaces high in the front viewport. And if you're using a measurement system of imperial measurements, the American system, you can go ahead and set your lengths to, let's go with 10 foot by 16 foot by 3 foot. And go ahead and hit enter at the end there so it registers. And you've got all your numbers there. And then I'm going to hit my zoom extents all to center up my object in all the viewports. Okay, next what we're going to do is we're going to do this with an edit poly. I'm going to go to my modifier list and go to edit poly modifier. Load that up. In here I can go into vertex mode now, and I'm going to work in the front viewport. So I'm going to click on the front and hit my min-max toggle to make that the maximized viewport. Then with my move tool, I'm just going to select the upper right vertices, or upper left vertices, excuse me, and I'm going to pull them back about 1.5 grid spaces. And then I'll go ahead and do the same to the lower left vertices, and pull them back a little bit further, about 2 grid spaces. And I'll do the same to the right hand side, and I'll pull both of those back about 1.5, top and bottom. I'll do those both at once, and you should end up with a shape roughly like this. Then hit your min-max toggle button again. Okay, next what we're going to do is go into polygon mode, and we're going to work in the perspective view. Go ahead and click on the top middle polygon in the center of your model, and you can use your 2D scale tool. And so click on your scale, and either in the top viewport do a 2-dimensional scale, or even in the perspective you can also do this by grabbing this front handle right here. We basically want to scale that up about 50%. If you watch down below, your numbers where it says X, Y, and Z, where my mouse is currently, will show you what the percentage of scaling is that's going on. Once you've got that scaled up, you can switch to your move tool, and in the top viewport, grab the X handle and move it back just slightly, probably about a foot. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use our extrude and bevel tools now. We're going to extrude this out just a little bit. Observing in the front viewport as I do this, I'm going to extrude this out probably about 1/4 of a grid space. I'm going to switch to my bevel tool, and I'll go ahead and bevel that up roughly about 1.5 grid spaces, and I'll taper that inward. And then I'll right click to end my bevel tool, and with my X handle I'll grab that and just kind of taper it back so that if you look in the front viewport here, the slant is more towards the front of the tank and it's more even in the back, but still there's still a slight taper there. Okay, the next step is to work on the cannon area, so we'll go ahead and select that front polygon off the turret we just pulled out, and you can hit your zoom extents all selected, which will zoom around that selected object. And in this case it's a polygon, and we're going to use our inset tool under the edit poly tools. So if you click on that and put your mouse over your polygon you have selected, go ahead and hold your mouse down and pull it back towards you, and basically pull it in about 50%. It's still going to be rectangular in shape, so we'll have to square this up by using our scale tool. And you can do this either in the left view or in the perspective. Grab the Y handle and go ahead and pull that in until it basically squares up this shape. Then hit your zoom extent selected again, and it should zoom around that same polygon. And now we're going to use the cut tool. If you navigate down onto the right hand panel, you will find the word cut under edit poly, and in the left viewport, if you place your mouse right over the top edge of the polygon we have selected, about in the center, and just single click, and you'll get a marquee line, and go ahead and move your mouse down until you get to the lower edge, and then just single click again. You should get a cut in there. And then right click to end the cutting tool. And do the same thing horizontally. Click on the right edge, and then pull it over to the left edge, and single click again, and then right click to end the process. Okay, next what we're going to do is we're going to go into a vertex mode. So click on your vertex and select the center vertice that we just created of that polygon. Over on the right hand side under the edit vertice rollout we have something that's called remove. If you remove that vertice, if you look in the perspective viewport, it leaves the plane intact, or the faces intact, but it removes those inner edges. Okay, while we're in vertice mode, we can of course straighten up and clean up our edges if they need it. If you made your lines crooked at all, you can grab the vertices and align them, move them into place if you need to. Once you've done that, go ahead and hold down your control key and select the 4 vertices of the edges you just cut. And it should look like something like this in the left viewport. And we're going to use our scale tool now. And we'll go ahead and just do a 2-dimensional scale in the left viewport. And just pull that out slightly. Now if you look in the front viewport, if I roll my mouse back a little bit, you can see when I scaled those, they kind of curved outward from my polygon. So I have to rotate them back in place. So I'm going to switch to my rotate tool with those vertices selected. I'm going to rotate them back so that they fall back in line here. Now I can go ahead and use my move tool and go to polygon mode, and it should have that same polygon selected. I can go ahead and move that in the front viewport out a little bit to kind of create a taper that comes outward. And if your polygon is like mine, is kind of octagonal shaped in the, or ovular I should say, in the left viewport, go ahead and switch to your scale tool. Just grab the Z handle and scale it up so it becomes more rounded. Okay, once you've got that shape in place, you can go ahead and hit your Zoom Extents All, which is the gray box with the 4 red squares, so that you can see your whole model at this point. Now right now, if we extrude this barrel out, it's going to kick straight up in the air. So what I like to do is pre-rotate this a little bit in the front viewport by grabbing the outer ring and just rotating it slightly so that the barrel comes out more straight on. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate down in the right hand panel, and I'm going to find the Edit Polygons rollout and find Bevel. You can of course do this with an extrude if you prefer. Place my mouse over the selected polygon, hold it down, and push my mouse forward to pull the barrel out. And I'll just taper it in ever so slightly so that it's tapered inward. Once I've done that, if you want to get fancy with your tank and add some detail like a muzzle hider or a flash hider, you can go ahead and extrude that out, bevel it out a little bit more, flare it, and bring it back in, leave it even, and then one more time, oops, and one more time we'll do this and taper it back down. And if you take a look at that, you should end up with something that looks like that in the front viewport. Okay, next what we're going to do is we're going to work on the lower portion of the model in the tank tread area. If we look underneath here in the perspective viewport, you can see it's flat. We need to create a chassis area for the tank treads in here. We also need to extrude inward to create the actual tank treads themselves and do a little cleanup on our model here also. So to do this, I'm going to go into vertex mode, and in the left viewport I'm going to draw a marquee around the lowest 2 rows of vertices in the center of my tank. And I'm going to switch to my move tool. I'm going to move these up and bury them right behind the next row of vertices above them. With them buried in there, they don't fall in line with one another, so I don't have to worry about welding at this stage or anything like that. Okay, next what we're going to do is go back to polygon mode. That's alright. And what we're going to do is use the cut tool again here, and we're going to cut these vertices so that we can have some tank treads. So I'm going to click on my cut tool, start here at the back of the tank in the perspective view, navigate all the way up to the front, and go ahead and single click on there and right click to end the process. And I'll do the same thing on the left view. That way we should end up with a couple of extra rows of vertices there. If you go now into vertex mode, you can see which vertices you just cut in. As you can see in my viewports here, they're not exactly straight. That's okay, we can go ahead and line those up now. So in the left viewport I'm just going to select those vertices that make up the left edge, and we'll zoom around those, and we'll just align those, just using the move tool. And I'll just pick up the one behind it as I go here, and we'll just get all of these aligned like that. Once you've got them aligned, then you can go ahead and just drop them straight down to the ground, and that's what will make your tank tread. You can do the same thing to the other side. Use my pan tool and navigate over. And just bury these behind one another and pick them up as I go, as I was saying. And then I just, last but not least, just drop them down. Okay, so if you zoom back out, you should end up with a couple of tank treads coming off the bottom of your tank. And the next step will be then to add the portal for the turret on top. So if you rotate to the top of your tank so you can see the top of it, and go into polygon mode and select the top polygon in the perspective view, find your inset tool under the edit polygon rollout and go ahead and scale that inward about 50%. Then use your two-dimensional scale, and in the top viewport grab your X handle and pull it in to square that off. Once you've got a nice square for your opening, then go ahead and click on your inset tool again and create a slight inset again. This will create a nice frame area. Now with that same polygon selected, we'll just use our bevel tool or extrude, and we'll just drop that into the turret area and flare it out. Last but not least, we'll select that back polygon that makes up that frame area that we just inset, and we'll go ahead and extrude that out. And if we use our move tool, grab that same polygon and we'll pull it back in the front viewport to create a taper for an opening. Again, if your length or your height is longer than you want it to be, go ahead and just move that polygon around and get it back to where you want it to be. Okay, this is essentially our tank. There's a couple other things we can do to clean this model up, kind of sweeten the looks of it a little bit. If I zoom in around that opening area, for example, I can go into vertex mode and select these inner vertices that make up the opening, and I can go ahead and drop them down to create a slight taper of that opening. I can also clean up some of these extra vertices that I don't need, and I can do this either using the remove button or the target weld. So in the perspective view now, I'm going to maximize this, and we've got some vertices that make up the side of our tank here, for example. We'll go ahead and eliminate a few of those. We'll just select like that vertex and this one, rotate around the back to get the other side, and I'll just hit my remove button. And now the ones right above it, what we're going to do is target weld them off, because we want this edge to remain there so we can create a fender area. So with the vertex tool, if you navigate down in the edit vertice rollout, you'll find target weld. Go ahead and click on the center vertice and just pull your marquee over to the next vertex in line with it. Do the same for the back one. And rotate around to get the other side of your model also. Again, I'm target welding these in line so that I don't lose the edges. We want the edge support there, but we can reduce the polygon count. Once you've done that, you can go ahead and do the upper ones also. Turn on my target weld again. And do that one. Come on now. And if you can't get it, don't be afraid to switch angles. So in this case, as you can see, I collapsed that in the wrong angle, so I'll just redo that. Bring those back. Something like that. The other side also. And don't forget on the bottom side of your tank also, we can clean all those vertices up that are in line that don't actually support any geometry. rotate around. Don't forget to be interactive in the program. So I can clean all those vertices up. Underneath, I can clean up all these other edges. Target welding these bottom vertices off also. Again, if they're supporting edges, however, you want to leave the vertex in place. Just a couple more to go here. I'll use my pan tool to move over so I can get to those other ones. And roughly you should have something that looks like that. I've got a couple more here in the back we can do. Okay. Now once we got our model cleaned up, we can go back to polygon mode and select the side truck and pulley area where your tank treads would rotate around. What we're going to do is bevel these inward. So to do that, I prefer to use the inset tool to create some thickness to them. So I'm just going to taper that in just slightly using my inset tool, and then I'm going to extrude them inward. Now I'm going to get out of the perspective viewport so I can observe in the top view as I extrude these inward. I'm going to hold down my left mouse button and pull my mouse back slightly as I watch the new edges come to life in the top viewport. And that should create a nice little tank tread area for you. And that, in a nutshell, is how you would go ahead and make a tank. There's some other edge cleanup you can do by removing your edges that are visible. Select those and navigate down to remove or remove those edges. This last one here, because it is an editable poly, it needs to have that in place. However, if I go to polygon mode and I select that top surface, it should select the whole polygon. And that is how you make a tank in 3D Studio Max.